Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Meet the Artist series. My name is Tommy Hensel, and I am the director of the Fine and Performing Arts Center at Moraine Valley Community College. Moraine Valley is located in Palos Hills, Illinois, which is a southwest suburb of Chicago, so we're just outside the city. Like everybody, for the past several months, we have been closed to performances, so we haven't been able to offer you all the live performances that we would love to be offering you. So in the intervening time, since we don't have access to the theater, we can't do live streams from the theater, we decided that we would reach out to some of our favorite artists and friends who have been on our stages in the past few years and find out if they'd like to sit down and just have a conversation. A lot of it's so that you can get a chance to know them, not as the artist on the stage performing for you, but more as a person, so you can sort of see where they're coming from and learn more about their art and their whole journey to get from wherever they started to our stage and beyond. So we've been thrilled that everyone has said yes. The only person who said no because they had really horrible internet, but told me that as soon as their internet improved, that they would come on the show with me. So I'm excited that everyone has said yes to me. So tonight I'm thrilled to welcome to the broadcast studio one of my favorite people in the world, but also one of my favorite people in the performing arts industry. So please welcome to our broadcast studio tonight, David Wannen. There you are, David.
Hey, Tommy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So yeah. I'm calling in, as always, from my home in Berwyn, which is a western suburb of Chicago. And where are you tonight?
I'm in a town called Poquag, New York. It's about an hour and a half north of New York City. It's up here in the Appalachian Mountains, and it's where my family and I live full time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we went into the broadcast studio, we were chatting pre-broadcast about your home. So I want to start there since that was already on our minds. So you built this home just a few years ago, correct?
That's right. We built it over the 2016-17 year, 2016-17. We moved in like June of 2017. So it's only been a few years. It's gone by very quickly. We've done a lot. We've done a lot in that short amount of time. You can see the swimming pool out there or there. Which is quite nice in the heat in the summer. But yeah, we really enjoyed it. It's different for sure. It's our little special project. There are two round houses with metal roofs that look kind of like the tops of grain silos, but they're built off of the Mongolian structure of a yurt, and we have two of them with a little custom breezeway in between. So.
Oh, I didn't realize it was two together. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's enough space for the two teenagers, the 10-year-old, and the two adults, and the three dogs that live here. So,
and then all the wildlife that comes to join you.
Yeah, for sure.
So how far outside of New York is that?
It's about an hour and a half north on the Taconic State Parkway, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a quick drive, or you can take the train. The closest train stop is Pawling, New York. But there's also Poughkeepsie, which is about 25 minutes away. And you can take the train from various points to Grand Central. It's pretty easy.
Awesome. So it's like the best of all worlds. It doesn't take you long to commute when you have to go into the city and you're out in the country.
That's awesome. The idea. Yeah.
So you and I met, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago it was now, because of your affiliation with the New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players. So what is your current role with that organization?
I am executive director of New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players, and I've also been a performer since 2004, if you can believe. So a long time now.
Wow. So when you started as a performer, did you start in management at the same time, or did you develop into that?
I developed into it because I was doing everything I could as a performer, full time, and bartending in between, as you do, you know. And as I matured a little bit and wanted to expand my horizons, and I went to Columbia Business School for a year. They had a post-baccalaureate program for people who majored in music or theater or English or whatever. If you wanted to get into business and think about maybe doing the MBA, it was an intense program for a year at Columbia University. So that was wonderful. And at the end of that year, this was like 2006. the artistic director, Albert Bergeret of New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players, approached me in an equity rehearsal on an equity break, a 5-minute break. He said, "What do you think about coming and working with me?" So it wasn't exactly what I had thought about in terms of, using that marketing and finance study, but at the same time, it made complete sense because I would get to do what I love to do, and I would get to use all the skills that I'd been learning and sort of meld the two worlds. And so the rest is history. I accepted, and I started working with Al, and by the next year, I was doing the touring. In 2007-8, I was sort of representing the touring. We said goodbye to our agency, and I sort of took on that job of selling and routing and managing the tours and all that kind of thing. And then around 2012-13, I pretty much took over the fundraising as well. And by the time yeah, exactly. By the time I did that, I started growing into more of the executive director role, and we hired some more staff, and so we have quite a good team now working for us. But yeah, that's what I do. I do all the business, the budgeting, the finance, all the stuff you do too.
Yeah. But you still get to perform, though.
I still get to be up on stage, which is great.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it would have been then probably Arts Midwest in September of 2008 that I met you for the first time, because I remember it was in Kansas City.
That's definitely 2008 for sure.
Yeah, that was my first Arts Midwest, because I moved to the Midwest from going to PAE on the East Coast, which is, for those of you who don't know, was a booking conference on the East Coast. But yeah, it would have been that Kansas City conference in 2008. Ooh, that's a long time.
I remember that one well.
So we've had the Gilbert and Sullivan Players twice now on our stage. I remember the first time we had you, it was Pinafore, and then Mikado the last time.
That's right.
And currently we have you, fingers crossed, on the schedule to do Pirates of Penzance, right?
Pirates of Penzance, that's right.
In the spring. So yeah, I remember, I'd seen sort of excerpts of your company, and of course I saw your collateral and the videos and stuff, but really seeing it on stage, it's pretty amazing for people who haven't seen this company to tour with. Essentially, it's a pretty big company, but it's certainly not the size that you would think of, like in a giant operatic version of a show like this. There would be so many more performers, but it feels like a huge production, but yet intimate at the same time. It's really quite a beautiful sort of paradigm that you put together.
It strikes a nice balance in that way, right? It's 23 actors on stage, which, it's kind of like there are Broadway shows that mimic that. But it does. One of the unique things is that we carry a 17-piece orchestra, which is not a big opera orchestra, but it's a rarity, I think, in our marketplace, right? So
it certainly is.
A full orchestra.
Yeah, so many people perform to tracks, which I hate. No offense to people who need to do that, but I think live music makes all the difference in the world. And for a 17-piece orchestra, I have to tell you, they put out an amazing sound and an amazing quality. It's a full-on major theatrical event, and it's amazing to me that you can tour with all of those sets and not just one set. I think the last time you had more than one with you as you were touring, so it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is the what happens when you've been doing this since 1981, I guess. Our founder director, Albert Bergeret, who I mentioned before, sort of serves as tech director as well. And he's got a great production manager in a young man named Joshua Strone, who works with us. And they just do a great job nowadays of getting, they've just got it down. When you've been doing something so long, you just know how to get in and get out. They've done it with so many different venues in so many different situations that there's an improvisation and a fluidity to it that really is nice. And it makes us be able to do things. I mean, we're on the same day, we go from one city to the next city, do the show. The next morning we're rolling out to another town, doing the show that night. So we're doing one-nighters, and Actors Equity one-nighters, which is even more rare. as you know, just to be able to manage the work restrictions that the union makes sure that the actors have, which is a wonderful thing in terms of the quality of the experience for the actors. But to do that with the routing is really a challenge. And that's sort of the magic when it all comes together, when it all gets put together.
When it seems like also having spent some time, not just with you at our venue, but also at conferences when you're showcasing and meeting so many members of your company, is that it feels like a family. It doesn't feel like just a bunch of people who got hired to do a show and then they go home. It really feels like a company in the old school sense of the word. Yeah,
you hit it. NYGASP is a family. We talk about the NYGASP family all the time. You've met, some of my closest colleagues and hung out with them, and you can see and feel that vibe. These people, most of us have known each other for, 10, 15 years, more. Some people have known each other for 30 years and are still active with the company. So it has that feeling. We've had weddings. We've mourned losses. But we're all friends for life. So it comes through, and it is that old school repertory company feel.
Yeah. But also you have a theater in the city that you actually do resident performances at. Talk to me a little bit, because I think that's an interesting space, that K Theater.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to move to some light. I'm fearing that we're getting with the sun coming down, we're getting a little low light. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to.
Okay, no worries. Yep, I'm enjoying the sunset though.
I just don't want it to go completely dark on us.
Poof. Yeah.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, you're an hour ahead of me, so I've still got ample sunlight streaming through this window here.
Everybody's getting a little tour. It's like Chris, right? Tour of the earth. You can see the roundness.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah. So where were we? What were we talking about?
Oh, we're talking about the K Theater.
Yeah.
So let's see your shirt, David. It's a total Gilbert and Sullivan shirt.
Yes, keep calm and patter on.
Patter on.
And this was developed when we produced our new Mikado, actually. And we could talk about that later, but that is it's very topical now, which is we all brought all these shirts back. One of our patrons, who's really wonderful, helped us produce these shirts. And the keep calm and patter on seems to just keep repeating its relevance for us. Yeah.
Yes, it does. And we'll definitely come back to the Mikado, because I think that's a really fascinating story. But I wanted to go back just a little bit to the theater that you do some resident shows at in the city.
So we do have a home New York City season. I mean, we're one of New York's theatrical / opera companies. And we sell our own tickets and produce the whole 9 yards and present ourselves. That is currently at the K Playhouse on 68th Street at Hunter College. It's about a 634 seat theater. And we have had a great experience with them. They've been wonderful partners and have just been a lot of fun to work with, very supportive. We get great dates from them. We get about 3 productions a year. So we do a fall production, a winter production, and a spring production in a normal year, of course. Everything's different right now, but that's been a great experience. But we've had that same series at New York City Center, which is 2,500 seat theater, all the way to New York NYU Skirball Center for the Performing Arts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and Symphony Space was our home for many, many years on 95th and Broadway. So we've been around and tried different spaces. We like the K for various reasons. It's sort of the right blend of seats and risk and the structure and all that kind of stuff. So.
And it's named for Danny and Sylvia K, right?
Yeah. Danny K loved Gilbert and Sullivan.
Oh, there you go. Well, looking back at some of his performances, he did patter. He was a patter singer, so it makes sense that he would love Gilbert and Sullivan. And
I believe he has. I'm not remembering it exactly off the top of my head, but he has recordings of GNS. I think he might have an entire album.
Oh, cool. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to
pretty cool.
I'm sure somebody's gonna Google it right now.
Research that, yeah.
And tell us. So one of the questions that I've asked everybody who's been on this broadcast with me is to sort of turn time back to when you were a kid. When did you get excited by performance, by art, by performing arts? And then ultimately, when did you have that thought, this is what I want to do?
So I went to the movie theater with my folks, the story goes, when I was about 4 years old. Might have been 3. And the first movie I saw in the theater was The Pirates of Penzance, if you can believe it, with Kevin Kline and Linda Ronstadt and Angela. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And we would watch it at home a lot. And of course, I wanted to be Kevin Kline from the start.
We all did.
Yeah. Yeah, who didn't? So that was my first exposure to it at a young age. And then very shortly after that, at my grade school, for some reason, the elementary school that I went to, the principal believed he was a huge Gilbert and Sullivan fan. He would have these assemblies and he would get up in front of the entire school and say, every child should be exposed to 3 things: Scripture, Shakespeare, and Gilbert and Sullivan. And he put it in that category. And by the time I was in 4th grade, I had seen Pirates of Penzance, the Mikado, which was my first one in kindergarten. I saw, I was 5 and I saw the full Mikado. I had seen the Pirates of Penzance, the Mikado, H.M.S. Pinafore, and the Gondoliers, all by the time I was in 4th grade at my grade school. So I was looking up to all these upperclassmen who were in 8th grade, 7th grade, doing this material. So GNS had a huge impact on my love of musical theater. And then the school went in the direction of doing more traditional, like contemporary, I shouldn't say classic Broadway musical theater. So we were doing Once Upon a Mattress in my 7th grade year. And that was my very first musical I ever did where I had a role. I was Sir Harry in Once Upon a Mattress.
Okay.
And that's where I really had that experience you were talking about. I fell in love with it. I wrote a short story about my experience performing in it, where I talked about the silence of the audience and the feel of the lights and singing out and then hearing the applause after. And it just blew me away. It was a magical experience. And ever since then, 7th and 8th grade, I was in Narnia as Aslan in Narnia, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe story in 8th grade. In 10th grade, I was in Bye Bye Birdie in high school, then Guys and Dolls and Pirates of Penzance. I played my first Pirate King as a junior in high school. And then I did the Fantastics and Brigadoon. So I just got really into it. And from then on, it was just more and more serious until this is what I decided I wanted to do,
So I know you graduated from Eastman School of Music, correct?
Right.
So was that, you went as a voice performance major then?
That's right. I
cool.
So I got sort of serious into classical singing in high school, actually. I was taking private voice lessons and learning languages and doing French and German and Italian, simultaneously to loving being in musical theater shows as well. And there's always that sort of decision about, are you going classical route or musical theater route? My daughter, actually, Olivia Rivera, right now is at Nazareth College studying a BFA in musical theater, but it's very much like a voice program too. So it's kind of it's kind of a very fine line.
Yeah.
At Eastman, I really went the classical route, and at Eastman is certainly one of the very, very good music school, known for a classical musical education. So it was a great experience. Went as a voice major. Had some challenges early on where I lost my voice due to a virus, and then got it back. So I felt that adversity, and then came through it and pulled it together by junior year and sort of kept up. But the greatest experience there was studying with Stephen Daigle, actually, who is the artistic director of Ohio Light Opera and the Eastman Opera Theater. And he really sort of instilled in me that love of the stagecraft, of acting while singing and performing, and the artistic direction, and sort of gave me a deeper appreciation and love for the whole art form, basically. And interestingly enough, he had us do Patience by Gilbert and Sullivan at Eastman. So it's weird. Gilbert and Sullivan stuck with me like throughout the whole experience.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of comments I wanted to share. Our mutual friend Bill Black says, "Good, great
Bill.
to see us." And we also got a little hello from Jody Beach.
Hey, Jody.
And then this is my friend Valerie from Seattle. Valerie and I were in music school together at Florida State, and we did some summer stock theater together early in our careers. So,
hi, thanks. Valerie.
So Eastman obviously was classically focused. So did you, in that process when you were performing, did you do some opera as well?
Yes. And I still do. I still study opera, actually. I study with Mark Oswald, who is a Metropolitan Opera baritone, who is a wonderful teacher. I've studied with him since I've been in New York, 20 years. Yes, I considered very seriously sort of the straight opera path. But I also got really into acting, and I studied acting and theater and film at the University of Rochester in a 5th year. I got a little scholarship to attend U of R for 1 year to study basically anything I wanted within this sort of thesis of theater and film. And it was wonderful. And so I got really into acting. My brother is a fabulous actor, Kit Wannen. And after that year, I sort of did, okay, am I going to grad school for opera, or am I going to New York and trying to make it? And I went the New York route. I met my brother in New York City, in Brooklyn. We got an apartment together in Williamsburg, Brooklyn on September 4th, 2001.
See, back before it was like the trendy place to be, right?
Yeah, and 1 week before 9/11, which was crazy.
Oh.
So, but that was an experience of that, having that be your first experience in New York. But it was great, and we had a wonderful time, giving it a go as best we could in the city, for sure.
So. We got another shout out from the someone who knows you.
Opera acting and modeling, yes, and I was a model too. I did that. I went over to Hong Kong, and that was a very fun experience, being over there for about 4 months. So
cool. Hey, you gotta make the money any way you can.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
And modeling is an allied profession. It's connected. It's connected.
In fact, I enjoyed most the runway because it was more performative. It's like you got to actually like strike, a walk and sort of be physical with it, more so than print. So for sure, that was fun. Yeah.
So we got a hello from Lori Piazza Russell.
Hi, Lori. That's
nice. Hello to you.
That's some family. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So the between the time, I know, looking at your resume, between the time that you graduated and got to New York and when you started working for the New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players, you obviously had other theater projects, and you did some touring as well. So, what were sort of some of the highlights of that period in your career?
And that was a wonderful thing. Basically, I was working at Ohio Light Opera in the summers, doing 7 shows a week, 70 performances a summer.
Been there.
4 months. You know how that is. Mm-hmm. And that's a wonderful company that continues this day to be sort of a brother company, sister company to New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players. So I was doing that in the summer. I was coming back. I was doing a lot of, I was doing the modeling stuff. I was doing some TV and some theater. I got the New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players job, which gave me my equity premiere at New York City Center in January of 2004. And that was my first equity job. And that's a big deal. At least it was back then. It catapulted somebody like me. It was the right type of thing for somebody like me, a singer, because I could then go to equity principal auditions and get a time instead of standing in line and waiting around all day. Like, I had a timed audition. That was huge for me.
Yeah.
And there was a great company called Atlanta Theater of the Stars.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that they're not operating anymore, but they were wonderful, and I have lots of friends still from those experiences. And they were a legit independent producer of Broadway titles, and their model was they would get a good star, or a couple of them, people who had been on Broadway or had commercial success. And my first job with them was Camelot with Robert Goulet. And I actually got to work with Robert Goulet, and that was like a dream come true, because he was like a hero, growing up. And I'm a Lancelot type, so that's what originally he had done. By the time I was in the show, he was King Arthur. So that was a great experience. Learned a lot. I even got to read. I understudied Lancelot at the time, and I even got to read with Bobby Goulet a couple of times in rehearsal. So that was pretty neat. And I still have friends from then. A couple years later, actually, as I got the NYGASP job, I also got the call to do Beauty and the Beast as well. And those were international. I mean, those were national tours, week-long sit-downs in every venue, every city. Mm-hmm. So we were flying and staying in town for a week, doing 8 shows a week, and then moving on to the next town. And that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Loved it.
Yep, we got a little hello from our mutual friend Joshua Kane.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah, a lot of people who don't understand how the touring Broadway thing works, is that for the most part, they're trying to get sit downs in a city where it's not just a one-off, it's not one performance or just a weekend. It's because it's such an epic process to get the show there and to put it up and to get it mounted, that it's just not worth those one-off for the most part. So in that time when you were touring, were there any like standout like theaters or locations that you thought, wow, this is an amazing house, or this is an amazing place?
There were many cool places. Atlanta Fox Theaters, where we would start those tours for both of those tours, Beauty and the Beast and Camelot. A great story is they both performed at Wolf Trap, the National Park for the Arts in Vienna, Virginia.
Yeah.
My hometown. I'm from Washington, D.C. originally. And that was my hometown. That was I grew up seeing, Washington Opera, summer performances there. I saw rock concerts and musicals and orchestral concerts there and all sorts of things. So it was a very special experience to go perform those shows at Wolf Trap, Park for the Arts. And strangely enough, New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players also would book early summer performances, 2 usually over a weekend, at Wolf Trap. So I got the experience of being in a New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players show, going on tour with this company, and then like in September coming back to Wolf Trap and performing with this different show. And that was one of my favorite experiences of my life, because I found out an interesting thing, and this kind of had an effect on my career, which I think you'll find interesting, which is that I found that I was having, it's certainly different experiences, so it's not apples to apples, but I was having kind of more fun doing the Gilbert and Sullivan in terms of the experience with the audience, because the audience was laughing 2-3 times a minute in the Gilbert and Sullivan. It's much more like a sitcom. There's a rhythm, it's a play that has a comedic edge to it that creates like a laugh per minute that's much higher than a Broadway show, which are more about the spectacle and about the singing and about the the sort of the character interplay. They're not, the comedy isn't the main thing, So the interaction in a GNS with a huge 5,000 seat audience, 5,000 people audience at Wolf Trap was really memorable. And it was kind of an early sign that I was going to be okay making this decision to go more full time with the Gilbert and Sullivan. It's very interesting that you asked about that, because that was a standout. But we also played Kansas City Starlight Theater, which is another huge outdoor venue, and many others. But we played Hershey Park and some other houses like that.
So Josh McCain asked a really fascinating question. I'm going to pop it up on the screen.
Oh my gosh. Coolest item or experience that you ever blew a touring paycheck on?
Of course, Joshua asked that question.
Oh, geez. It's funny. I was just going through my journals from those years, and I talked a lot about the money, because when you're young, you're trying to save money, and you're trying to make sure you can pay rent when you get back to New York City, and all that's. I mean, really, probably. I mean, the experiences while I was on tour, going out and buying rounds of drinks for everybody in the cast. I've been known to do that, as you know.
Yes.
But I also was very serious about like saving it so I could pay rent when I got back to New York. It was I just had seen that in my journal, and I remember wanting to try to save some money that I could invest in the stock market in my IRA. That was a big deal to me, at the time. So it's funny that you asked about that, because I do actually have some of those memories about touring Paychecks, for sure.
Yeah, back in the early days, when I was doing summer stock and early on, you're right. It's like you're making just enough money to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And your goal is, please let me make extra so I can save it. Right. I just want to not be living paycheck to paycheck. And here I am still doing that. So
we all.
Yeah. Hello. So something that came up earlier, I wanted to sort of circle back around, because I think it's a really fascinating story and it's very relevant to a lot of things in the world. So the first time we had you at our theater was Pinafore, but the second time was a production of the Mikado that you were touring. And in fact, I think we were either one of the last or the last touring performance of that show before you went back to New York, and we're working on putting the next season together. And then there was a really fascinating series of events around the Mikado. So talk to me about that, because I think it's a really interesting story.
So this is a big one. You were the last full production. The Fine and Performing Arts Center was the last full production of our previous production of the Mikado, which had been basically the same production since the 1980s. And the background of the story, it's a long story, so I'm not going to get into all the details. But the background of the story is essentially the Asian American community developed an awareness of the problematic stereotyping in performance practice of the Mikado throughout since its inception, that sort of, in my opinion, and through research, got worse and worse as the 20th century progressed. When I say worse and worse, I mean more and more stereotypical.
Yeah.
And what happens is somebody tries something, it gets a laugh, somebody tries something, and it gets sort of passed down from generation to generation. And they very justifiably raised concerns beginning in really throughout its history, but it started becoming more and more of a forward concern in the 90s and the 2000s, 1990s and the 2000s. And in 2014, a Seattle company out west, an amateur company, produced a Mikado that got national attention when they were criticized for their PR material, promoting the production. And they had a back and forth with the Asian American community out there. And then we created a little, a community, a board, committee group to analyze what we were going to do with the piece. And we made some decisions. We didn't go very far, and we went ahead with sort of promoting our previous our old production, but it wasn't far enough. And in 2015 in the fall, all of that attention came right home to us. So the good news there was that because we had been listening and we had been ready and we had had some tough conversations internally, we were ready to move fast. And actually, I was on tour with the Pirates of Penzance and the Mikado when we decided to cancel our production, replace it with Pirates for that December. And I took a big leap of faith and I told national news on MSNBC that we were going to create a whole new production without really asking anybody else. It's true.
A man after my own heart. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, and it was really due. It was really due, because here's the thing. It was the previous performance practice that was the issue with Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado. It wasn't the material itself. There are historical records of Gilbert saying The Mikado has nothing to do with the Japanese. It was a British satire and a satire on Western foibles and monarchy and authoritarian governments and bribery and all the timeless things that are still topical today. It seemed to keep repeating themselves in the relevance, for sure. So the issue was the performance practice. So we said, you know what, the Mikado can be done without it. It can be done in a world that's clearly Victorian, clearly out of England's time and place. But sort of in being true to the origins of the piece, influenced by a British writer's imagination of a Japan and sort of mixing that with his own company. And we just realized that concept with fantastical designs, both in costumes by Kinto Ott and in scenery by Anshuman Bhatia. And with 1 year later, after saying that on MSNBC, we had ourselves a beautiful new production that was out of this world and just sort of upped our game in terms of production value. We raised about $170,000 to produce it, and it sold out, and it got a rave New York Times review, and has had two and a half tours since that time, which is really amazing. One of the tours, I'm so proud of this point, toured Washington State, where the controversy had really developed in the first place. And we had a wonderful reception from the Asian American community out there. One Japanese patron in Olympia, Washington, before the show, I was doing a little meet and greet and sort of explaining the story, came up to me and said, I've loved Gilbert and Sullivan for all my life, but every time I saw the Mikado, I just had to bite my lip a little bit, and I always just felt a little weird. And he said, thank you so much for doing this, because now I can come and enjoy the Mikado the way it's supposed to be enjoyed, and I don't have to feel that way. And that really made us feel good about our efforts and exactly the reason why we did what we did. Yeah. So that's been a real positive story of change, listening, adapting, and we, in that, which is another wonderful thing, we embraced diversity, and we embraced some equity creation, and created some opportunity for a lot of people in our cast. And just like you said in the beginning, there are artists of color who have become part of our family, who are doing productions, all sorts of productions with us now, that came in through that process. And it just goes to show you that Gilbert and Sullivan is for everyone. It should be enjoyed by everyone. It should be performed by everyone, and should be enjoyed by all audiences. Yeah. So that's the message of that story. And it's been a real joy to be part of that, for sure.
I remember seeing it. It was at an APAP. It was in January, and I went to see that production. And I was, having seen the previous one and knowing this whole story, I was really fascinated to see it. And I have to tell you, it is a beautiful production. I'm not going to give the whole concept away in case somebody is going to go see it, but the way that it was conceived and the additional material that was created for it is seamless. If you did not know Gilbert and Sullivan and you did not know the story, you would not know that the additional material that was created for your concept was not original material. I think it was integrated seamlessly into the show. I do remember the cherry blossom costume.
Yeah.
the dangerous Caddishaw's dangerous costume.
Yeah, you don't miss a trick, do you? That has since been re-engineered for tour, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I would hope so. I found myself at times worrying that somebody's eye was going to get put out by that costume.
While we're on the story, I should give a shout out to an organization that both you and I are members of and love, Association of Performing Arts Professionals. Mm-hmm. In a part of the story of the Mikado was that project was simultaneously working for us at New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players, along with my fellowship with the APAP Leadership Fellows Program. Mm-hmm. And the Mikado became my project. So I was learning a great deal from the community in that Fellows Program out at USC. It was a partnership between APAP and USC. And that really influenced a lot of the decisions that were made. We went farther than I think we would have gone internally because of that process. So
yeah, in fact, it's so funny because I was going to ask you about that Leadership Fellows Program because I think it's an amazing program. For people who don't know, the Association of Performing Arts Professionals has a wonderful program. It's a highly competitive, so yay that you went through it, David, to really train like mid-career arts professionals to really up their game, essentially to move forward and to advance our profession. And I think they've done amazing work over the years, and I'm so happy that it's continuing on. And I had forgotten that this was your project for the leadership program.
Yeah, and the Fellows Program has it's a real eye opener about anti-racism, working together across previous boundaries, allyship. Creating equity. I really enjoyed diving into our own personal experiences as well as sort of the more structural learning and that kind of thing. And it was very necessary. It was hard and challenging at times. It was challenging about this piece that I was working on and not getting up in my own head and taking things for granted and which, you know, because I was so consumed by the project. I was, you know, vulnerable to sort of being up in the clouds in my own head about. Mm-hmm. And I had some very good and very tough conversations with folks who opened my eyes up, and it prepared me to then go into the fall where I had to talk in front of forums and be up on stage and speak to some of these issues. And I was so thankful for it. It was the perfect thing at the right time for me, for sure.
Well, and I have to say, I mean, and I'm not saying this just because we're on camera together and you're my friend, but watching that whole process unfold as somebody in the industry, I was astonished at how well you personally maneuvered through the whole. There were so many minefields that could have been stepped on so easily. In such a delicate process, and you managed to work your way through it so beautifully. It was really lovely to watch.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that, Tommy. One of the nicest moments was when Mario, I think it was one of, it was like an APAP board meeting for NAPAMA, for that organization that you and I sat on the board together with. That's North American Performing Arts Managers and Agents.
Yep.
And Mario, Mario Garcia Durham, who is the CEO of APAP, got up and spoke a nice mention about the Mikado specifically, which I thought was so sweet because, you know, it was the last thing probably on the agenda that day, but that was really nice. So thank you for that. It was a great
I agree. Mario is one of my favorite human beings on the planet. So yeah. So I wanted to turn the conversation a little bit to what's going on now with NYGASP, you know, since we are obviously, you're not touring. Your last tour ended in March, and you're kind of looking at when you're going to tour, but you haven't been idle in the process. So what's been going on with Gilbert and Sullivan Players?
Yeah. So this is a quick story, and it's a really good one for the audience. We were on the road in middle of March 12th, March 13th, and we had 3 performances left of a 9-performance tour in California of the Mikado. And we had done 6 performances, and we got to Folsom and performed on a Wednesday night there. And then on Thursday, Governor Newsom issued the ban on large gatherings. So we held out as long as we could, and then we realized those two were going to cancel. Then we were invited down to Cerritos to see if that one would happen under some exception. It didn't happen. It got canceled. So we ended up flying home with 3 canceled performances, sort of on the normal day, because it made sense for us to fly home anyway. And then we got home, and we all went to our homes, and spread out all over New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. Some people went to their folks' house in Minnesota or other states. But one thing we saw while everybody was adjusting to the social distancing was a brilliant parody written by a choir director out in Southern California. And we received permission with her to record this parody that had gone live. And it was a parody of the modern Major General from the Pirates of Penzance.
I saw this.
Yes. And we said, gosh, we got to record that. Presenters were messaging me saying, you got to record this. You got to record this. So we did, and we got permission, and we put a fundraising link for COVID relief, the main action fund there. And it went our version of viral. We got 30,000, 33,000 views on YouTube. It was a big hit, and it showed us. We have a wonderful colleague named Danny Bristol, who is a great director of photography, cinematographer, videographer type guy, editor, and he it showed us what we could do working with him, and that kind of got us thinking. And so we started producing stuff. We produced a 16-voice madrigal. That's really musically beautiful. One of my favorite pieces of music from Ruddigore, which is one of the Gilbert and Sullivan shows. And that had a wonderful message, and it was a very musically beautiful piece. So that kind of let us know we could do the comedy and the patter and the editing, and then we could do something that's very musically beautiful and sort of insert visuals and stuff. And in talking to one of our venues that had us on the books for this summer for a concert, Redlands Bowl Performing Arts, we realized that the best thing we could do, they wanted to do a virtual season. So the best thing we could do is create a virtual concert from scratch.
Uh-huh.
And we did. And we had used these things that we had learned, and everybody using their iPhones or better cameras, decent microphones, and a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
We created a virtual concert, a 50-minute virtual concert that is just totally creative and totally new and a lot of fun. And wonderfully, opening nights at Florida State University under the direction of Michael Blatchley co-commissioned the work after hearing about the project. And both venues have made it, have given permission for us to pursue sharing this with presenters everywhere. So that's another wonderful thing. So we've been quite busy doing that kind of work. And it has allowed us to realize that there's something to our furthering our mission, serving our mission by performing in this way. We all miss not having an audience. We all miss not having that interplay between the actors on stage and the audience. There's nothing like it. But there is something to this that's different, in that it's a very accessible format to learn about Gilbert and Sullivan, or to see your favorite Gilbert and Sullivan. You can understand all the words. You can see the actors' facial expressions. It's kind of like this, it's kind of intimate and fun. Yeah. So that's been a great realization, is that we can still serve our mission by we're kind of getting into a little bit of filming.
So you created a 2-minute trailer for this. So I'm going to share my screen in a minute so everybody can see this amazing trailer. And David and I actually have been having a conversation about potentially bringing this concert to our audience, to all of you. I'm hoping that I can convince the college that it's worth an investment of some money to do this. So fingers crossed on that. But okay, I have to put on the geeky glasses in order to do the share screen. So let me share this screen with people.
moment's dread, a cautious way we feel. No sound at all, we never speak a word. A glance foot forward be distinctly heard. A British tar is a soaring soul, as free as a mountain bird. His energetic fist should be ready to resist a dictatorial word.
Three little maids who all unwary come from a ladies' seminary, free from a genius to the lady. Three little maids from school, three little maids from school.
If you're anxious for to shine in the high aesthetic line as a man of culture rare, you must get up all the germs of the transcendental terms and plant them everywhere. You must lie upon the daisies and discourse in novel phrases of your complicated state of mind. The meaning doesn't matter if it's only idle chatter of a transcendental kind. We live in things of pleasure, in things of
Wait, I'm unmuting. There we go. I've unmuted us.
Thanks for sharing that. That was great. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, I really love that. That's just, it's so clever. And I feel like, you know, the all of it works. The cinematography is great. The editing is awesome. And, you know, one of the things that I was talking to another group today about, who's coming to our theater, hopefully in the spring, who's done some virtual stuff, just how hard it is to create something that sounds cohesive in an online environment, because obviously you can't all be singing at the same time together,
right?
Because everybody's got a different lag time on video. So but it sounds as though you are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and so that was a lot of, as you intuited, there's a lot of work that goes into that. James Mills directed this, the gentleman that you saw there at the end, one of our lead patter singers, and he put a ton of work into coordinating us and making sure that we were all sort of well rehearsed before we would record. So we would have Zoom sessions, little rehearsals where we would like figure things out and figure out what we were going to do and say, oh, on this piece of music or on this part of the music, we're going to do this gesture or this look, and sort of set up the tone and the visual environment before we went in and did it. Then a lot of times we would share, like in that British tar trio from H.M.S. Pinafore, which sounds really good in the concert. That was done using, you know, really good mics, and we would share with each other. You know, the tenor laid his track down, then he shared it with me, and I listened to him and me while I sang into the camera. So you put it together that way. But we were doing it for a week. I mean, it was a solid. I was in my tux for literally a week, recording from 10 in the morning all the way to the end, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. at night, till my family couldn't take it anymore.
No more Gilbert and Sullivan.
It's a lot of work. It's because it's film. It's just like you have to do all the takes. You know, you have to get all the lighting and the sound and all that right. So that a lot went into it, but it was worth it. It was a great experience.
One of the things that I loved the most the first time I watched it, that I laughed out loud, was that really clever homage to being in quarantine with the percussion, the dumping of the children's toys, the kitchen implements, the things that are surrounding all of us in these Zoom meetings and things today. That was really clever because it was very subtly referencing this experience, which I thought was, whoever thought of that, I thought that was really clever.
For sure, yeah.
We had a couple of really nice comments. I want to bring them up on the screen for you. First, Mike Russell.
Hey, Mike.
Seems like a decade to see you in the Pirates of Penzance.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can't wait to. Hopefully, we'll return to Wolf Trap. They're down in Maryland, in Baltimore. So hopefully, they'll get to see a show nearby soon.
Yep, and Gene Ronsky, who is one of our patrons and a good friend of the Fine and Performing Arts Center, is crossing our fingers because we've got Pirates of Penzance scheduled for March right now.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed.
Hope we can see you too, Gene. Love to say hi to you after the show.
All right. So yeah, so the virtual concert that we just saw the clip for. So if anybody out there is watching who is connected with the Performing Arts Center, they can just contact you if they're interested in perhaps licensing that for performance, correct?
Indeed, that's right. And what's really fun is the model is pretty easy and straightforward. We pick out a date to do like a live event, kind of like we're doing now. But instead, we're watching the virtual concert, which is a 15-minute concert. Then the cast will join on that date and talk to all the audience that is watching the show, which is really fun, and share all the insiders little bits of sort of commenting as the show goes on. And the theater gets sort of a geographical exclusivity, so they can make sure their audience is seeing it pretty much for the first time. And as well, the experience is, they can have it up on their website for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. So there's a little bit more to it than just pop and then it's gone. So
yeah, no, I think all of that's a really clever way of marketing it, because those of us who run theaters, a one-off thing that's only available live and then it's gone, it just doesn't work.
Especially in today.
Yeah, it just doesn't. We have to give people, like for instance, this broadcast, some people do not have a Facebook account. So I'm streaming this live to YouTube at the same time because there are people who need to watch it on YouTube because they have left Facebook or were never here to begin with.
That's right.
And it lives on YouTube so people can come back and watch it again. So it's necessary to sort of have the, ability for people to watch it more than once or, watch it later. So I think that's very clever. Thank you. And anybody who's interested in more information, you can go to the New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players website, which I just put up on the bottom of the screen, NYGASP.org. And will there be information there to get in contact with you, David?
Yes, there is.
Cool. Sweet. So we're coming close to the end of our time together, but I was just wondered, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you wanted to bring up or talk about?
No, Tommy, I thought this went really, really, really well, but I shouldn't expect anything less with how long we've been friends and just like easy talking like we're, having martinis at a bar or something.
Well, yeah, I finished the line, but as I said earlier, so Gene's going to laugh at this. I have the bottle with me. It's not far away, so I can refill. It's a nice Rioja, 2015 Rioja Crianza, so I can have another glass of wine as soon as we're done.
Nice.
Yep. So for anybody who has not had a chance to see the New York Gilbert and Sullivan Players once they're back touring again, or if you're in the New York area once they're back doing shows at one of their either at the K Theater or another theater, you need to grab a ticket. But in the meantime, keep an eye out for where this virtual concert will be permitted, because there may be someplace either near you or accessible online for you to be able to watch the whole 50-minute concert. And I do love the idea that the cast is going to be there live to talk to the audience. I think that piece of it makes it so much more attractive for me as a presenter.
It gives us a little feeling of actually being in the theater together. So,
yeah. Cool. So thank you, David. I love the fact that you took so much time to join us. And for those who tuned in a little bit later, David's beautiful house that you see behind him is built on the concept of a yurt. So that's why you're seeing. Yeah, there you go. It's round. It's actually two yurts connected by a breezeway. So one of these days I'm going to have to come visit your home once we can travel and visit each other again.
You have a standing invite, as you know, Tommy.
Awesome. No, I'm excited. So David, thank you so much. I'm going to take you out of the stream in just a second, but please don't leave, because after we end the broadcast, you and I can chat for a few more minutes. I wanted to say a big thank you to our tech crew behind the scenes, Jody Marneris, Amanda Hansen, and Katie Norton, for all of their help in making this happen. And please, keep tuning in. So David, I'm going to take you out and I'm give them a little bit of a redux of what's coming up, and I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Thank you all so much.
So thank you, everybody, for tuning in again tonight. Just so you know, every Tuesday we're doing this. Next week, I'm excited to welcome the four amazingly talented ladies who are the performers of the group Farewell Angelina. They're an amazing country music group that appeared at the Fine and Performing Arts Center in the fall. I think you'll have a great time meeting the four of them. Following that, I have Jessica Deere, who is the artistic director of Chicago Dance Crash. And then on September 8th, I'm welcoming the iconic performer Charo to our broadcast studio, followed by Jorge Perez, who is the executive director of Ensemble Español Spanish Dance Theater. So we have some amazing people coming up. And I think if you tune in next week, you're going to have a great time, because the ladies from Farewell Angelina are not just amazingly talented, but they're funny, and they're so much fun to hang out with. One of their most recent albums is called Women and Wine, and it's all about women drinking wine. So so I'll be drinking wine with them while we're chatting. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm going to be signing off in a second, but please invite your friends to come watch our broadcast. If you're watching this now live, you can come back and watch it anytime afterwards on our YouTube channel. If you're watching it later, you're probably watching on the YouTube channel. So thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. And I am now going to sign off for the evening. Everyone have a great evening, and I'll hopefully see you all again next Tuesday.